wonderful that we can have this interview with you. You will be playing the organ in two very different pieces this week. The Saint-Saëns Symphony, in which it is more obligato part, and of course the Poulenc concert. Both works show the organ out of its church-like environment where we know it. Can you tell us how the sacred character of the organ and the more profane character will be heard in this program?
Yeah, in fact, both pieces, Poulenc and Saint-Saëns, were composed for another purpose than the church. The Poulenc concerto was first performed in a private home, the home of the Princesse de Polignac, and in Paris, and the Saint-Saëns was first performed in London, in Alexandra Concert Hall. So it's something really different than an organ in the church, for example. But I think the Saint-Saëns works pretty well in the big acoustic also. I played it, for example, in La Madeleine, where Saint-Saëns was organist. And it works very well because the organ is really made for that kind of big things, pompeux, we say in France, and it works very well. Now, the relation with the church is maybe more hearable in some parts of the Poulenc. We always say that Poulenc went to the, to make bad things on the Saturday evening and then go to the church on Sunday morning just to try to recover a bit. And this is what we hear in that piece when we hear that kind of very entertaining allegro and then something really religious like the end, for example.
So the organ can have very many different moods.
Yes, for sure. Would you like me to show you something?
Oh yes, please.
So, for example, in this Poulenc, it's quite funny. So let me just use all of these registrations here for that. This, when we have in the Poulenc that kind of things, for example, it's really that kind of thing is not really the church atmosphere, or of course it's something different. But when you arrive at the end and you have that kind of things, for example, it's of course totally different. This is exactly the same atmosphere than what we can hear, for example, in the Litanie à la Vierge Noire, also by Poulenc, that kind of thing. So it's it's two pieces in one, in fact.
Was Poulenc himself an organ player?
Poulenc was not an organ player, and this is our chance. Because it just gives another impression of the organ. When this is organists who compose for the organ, they know too much about the instrument. So there is no surprise, there is no originality. It's just organ music. Not always, but most of the time. And Poulenc had that chance not to know the organ that well. And he was helped by Maurice Duruflé to make the registration of that concerto. And so he really used everything which was possible on the organ, and everything which was not possible with the organ was made by the orchestra. And this is really a nice combination between the orchestra and the organ because of that, especially. And when he uses the special registration, like the mixture, for example, that kind of high stops, then this is something that we could not have on the orchestra. And on the other hand, when the organ cannot be expressive enough, then he asked the orchestra to do the expressive parts, and it works perfectly well. And there is even a little story with that. When Duruflé went to Poulenc, or Poulenc went to Duruflé to the Met to make the registration, Poulenc asked on some point, you know, in that place I would like this very boring sound of the organ. So, so Duruflé tried to find different things, and finally he found that kind of registration. And this. And Poulenc said, "Yes, that's right. This is exactly right." So.
And that was boring.
That was boring for him. Yeah, it was not that kind of light of the mixture that I played before. It's just something like we hear in the church, so especially in the Catholic Church, and so this is what he wanted to have in that place. So, but he didn't want only this. Duruflé said also that when he used, for example, the chromorne, which is this very funny sound. Then he laughed very much. He loved that, in fact, and he used this like this, for example. So, some examples.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any liberty when you perform the piece, when it's so well described how the registration is?
Yes, we do, as always. In fact, the difference between an organ and any kind of instrument, even the orchestra, is that we have the registration, but the registration is always an idea. It's not like the orchestration. We cannot imagine a conductor saying, so today, well, I don't like that to be played on the flute. Maybe the oboe would be better or something like that. No, we have to respect what is written in the score, which is not the case for the organ. Because an organ is always different. This organ has, for example, 4 manuals. You can see the stops on each side, and the volume also of the instrument compared to the whole is very important. You know, there is some kind of relation with that. And it's always different. So I could arrive and have an organ with just 2 manuals, 5 manuals, and the stops, different positions, etc. And I will have to manage with all of that. And so because of that, the indication of the registration is the first start of the color that we have to find, and then, well, we experiment and we try to do our best to make this working first with the acoustic of the hall, and then also with the orchestra, because we have to balance also the sound with the orchestra.
Is this, could you characterize this special organ? Is it different than others, in which aspect is it?
Well, this organ is, I knew the organ first because I've played here 6 years ago, so I knew what to expect. I knew it could work also very well for the Poulenc especially. Well, I try to manage with this the sound of the organ to try to make it sound at its best always.
But are there special decisions you make here that you don't make in other organs? Yes,
it's clear that we have many possibilities. Let me show you, for example, this passage with the chromorne, which made Poulenc so happy. So we have that like this. But I could use also this one, for example, which is slightly different in it's different not only in the sound, but also in the location. The same, I could use this. So you see, on just one bar, I have already those possibilities. I could do something else also, maybe this, we can, or this. So And then the job of the organist before the first rehearsal with the orchestra is just to find everything, just to be sure that it will be the right color at the right time with the orchestra especially.
Now, of course, we know the organ is an instrument par excellence for improvisers. Poulenc himself was an improviser at the piano as well. Do you sense in the way the concerto is written that there is a mind of improvisation behind it?
It can be, because when we hear that piece for the first time, it's very difficult to understand the structure. Well, as an improviser, we always try to make the improvisation sounding like written music. Maybe Poulenc tried to do the opposite way, so he tried to make written music sound like improvisation. So it's also some kind of relation with the organ.
And would you mind to finish our entretien showing a little improvisation?
Let's try.
Okay.
Attends, comment je vais faire ça? Let me just think about that.